Hi guys, it's Miss Suzie from the Evergreen Park Public Library again, and welcome to another celebration exploration. So every week in December, we will be talking about a different celebration of the winter, and today we are talking about Winter Solstice. So, Winter Solstice falls on December 21st or 22nd every year in the Northern Hemisphere. Winter Solstice takes place in June on the 21st or the 22nd in the Southern Hemisphere every year. And it depends on where we are in the astronomical calendar. So where things are placed in the sky, basically, for us, tells us what date and what time it will fall on. This year, it will be Monday, December 21st at 4:02 in the morning, Central Time. So for us, everybody in the hemisphere experiences the winter solstice at the same time. Now, we all are in different time zones though, so you would experience it at a different time in your time zone, right? But it's all the same moment that we would all experience winter solstice together. So for our part, it would be 4:02 a.m. on Monday, December 21st. So it's not actually a day or a full day, but a specific time that the sun is above what's called the Tropic of Capricorn. It is celebrated often as a full day, but the actual event is only a moment. It's a moment that it happens. Since ancient times, people all over the world have celebrated this day. Now, they've celebrated the winter solstice, they've celebrated the summer solstice, and then the hemispheres swap. So when we're celebrating winter solstice, the southern hemisphere, like in Australia, will be celebrating their version of summer solstice, which is going to be their longest day with the most light, right? But because since it's been ancient times, people all over the world have known and seen this astronomical difference, right? They all celebrated around the same time, but there are different rituals and traditions that go with it for each one, right? So we can't possibly talk about all of them, but we will talk about some of them. We'll talk about different ones that we're probably more familiar with in other aspects. But it's really cool because observation dates that we know about go all the way back to the end of the Stone Age and the Neolithic period. So we've seen that for more than 10,000 years, people have celebrated the winter solstice. So there are a bunch of different myths and legends that have come from that for different cultures, and there are a bunch of different rituals and traditions and cool things that happened around winter solstice and things that were celebrated for winter solstice. The one thing that each of these cultures has shared that we will talk about, some of the different examples of traditions, is this astronomical event. So everybody knew it as the shortest day. So the longest night is something that was the moment that you marked the beginning of light coming back again. You're no longer losing light. So we've been coming and we've been losing light, and now you're gaining light every day, right? So you're gaining more time that you can be outside working or outside doing things. So you're now smack at the beginning of what people would call astronomical winter. So every culture shared that, but the things they did around it were different. The word solstice itself is derived from the Latin solstitium. And solstitium meant the sun stands still. And they're kind of right in a way, because at high noon on the day of the solstice, it does look like the sun isn't moving at all. It just stays still. And that's kind of cool, right? Like, we all experience the solstice in a different way, but it's cool that they're kind of right, that the sun stands still, like it looks like it does. Seeing as the solstice is the beginning of astronomical winter, it is also known to symbolize new beginnings. So as we end one year of the light getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, we're starting new beginnings, and we're going to see light more and more, right? So that's pretty cool that a lot of different cultures had kind of latched onto that. So different places will all celebrate new beginnings and the idea of light coming back into the world. So we're going to talk about some different celebration rituals and traditions from a couple different cultures. I obviously cannot do a comprehensive. A lot of these are based on European traditions. And part of the reason for that is because a lot of those European traditions have leaked into what we know as Christmas now. So the pagan ritual of having 12 days of celebration has kind of been stolen by the Christian religion, and it turned into 12 days of Christmas, and they celebrate with different feast days, or they have in the past. But it originally was pagan celebration. So a lot of those celebrations kind of got mixed in together to try and encourage pagan beliefs. Like, you don't have to lose all of your stuff if you want to be a Christian. So interestingly enough, a lot of what we think of as Christmas now is very much from pagan celebrations that included the Winter Solstice. And that was kind of a big deal. So for like the Celtic traditions and the Norwegian or Scandinavian or the Germanics, Nordic type traditions, all kind of have mixed together to make all of these different celebration bits that we now celebrate as parts of Christmas. So one of the things that was celebrated for solstice was this legend of the Oak King and the Holly King. And the Oak King represented summer and light, right? So the Oak King would come and he would have a fight at the winter solstice with the Holly King, and the Holly King represented winter, and he represented the darkness. So the Holly King and the Oak King would have a fight, right? And at winter solstice, can we guess who won? It was going to be the Holly King, right? So the Holly King would win out in the winter because darkness was winning right then. But when they came to celebrate feast for the summer solstice, the Oak King would win. So it's kind of this cool tradition of seeing the two kings come out and the two kings would fight, and you knew which king was going to win based on which solstice you were celebrating. For the European celebrations, this would always be met with great feasts and with awesome parties. Like, they were all pretty much known to have a pretty decent party, right? But there were a lot of different traditions that each group had different ones of, right? So like the Celtic priests, for example, would cut mistletoe from the oak trees. Mistletoe, you see how we now use mistletoe, and it would give it as a blessing. Oaks were trees that were seen as sacred to the Celtics, and the fruit of the mistletoe was seen as a symbol of life in the dark times of winter. Now, the Celtic priests may have been the ones that gave it as a blessing and a gift, but there were other groups that used mistletoe as part of their evergreen, and there were other traditions with the mistletoe. Certain counties would later be known to have girls that would hang a mistletoe in their doorway and kiss the first man to walk through it, and then he would owe her a gift. But decorating with evergreens of things like holly and ivy have been common as a celebration of something that it looks alive in the winter when all the other vegetation is dying. So children would pull holly and ivy and bring it home and decorate their houses, the inside of the houses, with evergreens. Hollies were also believed to be powerful in that they had these spiky bristles that were believed to repel unwanted spirits. So since you were all in this dark time, it was thought that holly would protect you from any dark spirits coming into your home. The ivy, on the other hand, was an evergreen that grew in this like garland. So they would make these garlands out of it, right? Because it would grow in this nice long strand of it. And it would remind you that you would get through this and you get to the other side. And the ivy was this very nice garland to be able to wrap around things. Like you could make an ivy cross. Crosses have been around since before Christianity started using them. So pagans used to wrap crosses in ivy and put them in their home. But there were a lot of different ways that people would use holly, ivy, and mistletoe. Giving gifts and giving coins is something that has been popularized as the thing to do for Christmas. But they also gave gifts and coins. Coins were often given freely to small children as their little presents. They would be able to have some free time, because in the winter months you had a little bit more free time because you couldn't possibly be doing the outside work, right? But something that also became super common even before Christianity was a thing, so through pagan times, to celebrate winter solstice, was knowing that this was going to be when true winter, astronomical winter, was starting, that you would be kind to those in need. So if you had extra food, or if you had extra fuel, like you had extra wood that you could give, then you would be willing to help out those in need. That was very common in the traditions to see across for Yule, or for just Celtic winter solstice. You were able to see those types of traditions throughout the board, kind of. But moving into something a little bit more specific, the Old Norse festival was known as Yule, with a J, J-O-L. And they believe that this may then be tied to the word jolly, but also to the word Yule. So it may be an interpretation then later of the word Yule, right? Which we all know maybe as Yuletide greetings or as a Yule log. But Yule, not just for jolly, but also for jolie in French, they believe it may be connected to the word in French, which means festive. So it's kind of cool to see where these words have kind of come from, maybe, like, and moved towards in different languages. So Yule included a symbolic fire. So there was always a symbolic fire and with a large log in Yule. And in Yule, you wanted to see the light. So in the big long houses of the Vikings, you would have this large log and it would stay lit. And that's kind of where we get for quite a while. And it'd be very bright. But it's kind of where we get a Yule log from. Now you may be used to seeing a Yule log as in like a pastry Yule log, like a thing you would eat, which is again just a representation of a Yule log of the past, which would represent this white bringing aspect to the darkness of the winter. So a traditional Yule log, obviously not edible, would be the log you would use for your fire in celebration. So you'd have a celebratory fire. So that's a nice, cool Norse Viking tradition that we still see today. A lot of people have fires in their fireplaces, specifically for Christmas. So basically, all of these different things that are shared between the traditions are like Saturnalia, which is from Rome. Saturnalia would be the end of the planting season. And in the end of the planting season, slaves did not have to work for this period of time. They were given time off. There was role reversals. They were allowed to be a little bit more free for a period of time. They had merriment and festivals, and they participated in what we would probably consider shenanigans. But they enjoyed the fruits of their labor, of all of the work that they had been doing. And as winter was going to set in, they were celebrating before they all hunkered down for the winter, right? in Dongji in China, they would celebrate the end of their harvest. So they had families come together and celebrate again all of the good things that had come out of their season, right? They would celebrate the year that they had had and kind of be prepared to settle down for preparing themselves for the next year. So you see there's a lot of different things that are shared. There are other ones like Soya from the Hopi of northern Arizona in America. They had their own ceremonies on Winter Solstice that included prayer sticks and different rituals that they would do. There's a Persian festival of Yalda. But there are festivals all over the world that mark this one specific happening. So it's pretty cool to think about the fact that for years and years and years, in ancient times, they were celebrating in ways that we can see now at the same time. They didn't know each other. They didn't have the internet. They couldn't talk to each other. But everybody knew to celebrate around the same time. And it seems because they all had the capability of understanding the astronomical calendar much better than we understand how they understood it. They were obviously more advanced at understanding that than we were, and they relied a lot more on the stars than we do. But it's very cool to see all these different traditions lining up on the same day for all of around the world, because they were celebrating together unknowingly everywhere. So it's very cool. And if you guys look into Winter Solstice, I really recommend you look into some Winter Solstice games and traditions. Maybe more recent ones would be cool for you to look into. But I have, because mistletoe in especially the European stuff, mistletoe was very important. I have linked a mistletoe pattern that you can use on felt, or if you use an old book or just paper, different papers. I made these. These are ones I've made. I colored them green on the book pages. I used different felts for the felt one, and then I just kind of tied them together. But you can use the pattern to make your very own mistletoe, since I know we all can't get out of the house and go buy mistletoe necessarily, or go find where they grow. But I will link that, and you can actually make your very own mistletoe if you'd like. I hope that you guys look into some of the traditions of Winter Solstice around the world. Maybe look into Yule, or look into Saturnalia. There's some really cool stuff that happened in Saturnalia, which was the whole festival, so not just Winter Solstice stuff, but because it's longer than just the one day of celebrating that part of it. But some of those traditions are very much like our Halloween. It's a little weird, but it's very interesting. So I hope that you guys maybe get into looking into that and seeing how our traditions are very similar to those of years past, very, very old traditions. Our Christmas is not as different and interesting as you think it might be. It has a lot of aspects from cultures that have been around and traditions that have been around for a very, very long time. So I hope you enjoy, and for anyone who celebrates solstice in any way, if you are enjoying your solstice, I hope that you have a lovely solstice and you enjoy your traditions. And until next time, bye guys, happy celebrating.